Hello, everyone. We're going to be in our science notebooks today taking notes, our first set of notes for this unit. Go ahead and fill in your table of contents. So the first side says plant versus animal cell, and this is P versus A, which just stands for plant versus animal, Venn diagram. And that's going to be on page 30 in your notebook. If you need to pause this to write it down, go ahead and do that now. We are going to skip over to page 29 in our notebooks. So I'm going to have you set up the page first. The title is plant versus animal cell, just like the table of contents said. And then I find it helpful for space reasons to turn it to the side and label one side plant cell and one side animal cell. Try to get it as even as possible. You're going to need plenty of space for actually drawing out each cell. We're going to label the organelles, and we'll talk about what each organelle does later on. But for now, we're just going to look at them, see what they look like. After the notes today, I really encourage you to color these based on matching the organelles within each. So for example, if you color the nucleus pink in the plant cell, you would cover the nucleus pink in the animal cell. What that's going to do in your brain is really start to compare and contrast the differences between the two, which I think is very helpful. I'm going to start on the plant cell side, and plant cells, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but they tend to be more rigid in shape. They're less round, or their shape is mostly just a rigid shape. That means it has like corners. Usually, and not all, and that's the case for what I'm about to draw entirely. It's kind of a rectangular. A rectangular shape. Okay, doesn't have to be completely perfect, just do your best to make it neat. Okay, there's two layers on a plant cell. One is called the cell membrane. That's the first layer. Then there's an outer layer that's even stronger. And it's actually what kind of keeps the cell in its rigid shape. So this is called the cell wall. That's the cell wall. I'll zoom in a little bit. An animal cell does not have the cell wall. They just have the cell membrane. Cell membrane sort of lets things in and out. For a plant cell, the wall itself is just, it's permeable. Things can go in and out of it, but it gives it its shape. Okay, the biggest vacuole on a plant cell is actually, the biggest organelle on a plant cell is a vacuole. Now, plants, we know, go through photosynthesis, and one of the ingredients of, I'm giving this a random blob shape that don't feel like it's exactly like this, but we know plants need water, and vacuole is actually the organelle responsible for holding the water. So the size of the vacuole depends on how much water the plant is contains at that moment. It's actually possible to burst it with too much water, or to starve it of water and have it shrivel up and die, hence your plant not making it. So the vacuole is very important for storage. Also, we know, because these are eukaryotes, both plant and animal cells are a type of eukaryote, they have organelles and they have a nucleus. The nucleus is usually pretty round in shape, and it has a smaller, what's called nucleolus inside of it. So let's label this nucleus, and the small one, nucleolus. And we'll talk about exactly what they do later on, but I think you remember we've talked about it before, that DNA is contained inside the nucleus. So that's really important as well. That's the instructions, the instruction manual for everything that this is supposed to be. Okay, the next one we're gonna go over is what's called the endoplasmic reticulum, or the ER for short. So obviously endoplasmic reticulum, lots of words. We'll break down that word later on. For now, we'll call it the ER. The ER sort of is a pathway that transports things in and out of the nucleus, and it kind of just winds in kind of a random fashion-ish. And there's usually two, I guess, pathways. Everything I say usually two, I mean, every cell is a little bit different, but okay, so this is called the ER, or endoplasmic reticulum. I'm just gonna write ER for now. When we talk about the functions of it, we'll spell it out on another day. So this is the ER. Usually one part of the endoplasmic reticulum has dots on it, and those dots are called ribosomes, and they form what we call the rigid ER, and any part of it that does not have those ribosomes we would call the smooth ER. I think you can figure out why we would call them that. Context clues here. The next one that I want to cover is called the mitochondria. The mitochondria there's many of them. I'm only going to draw two of them just to show that there's more than one, but there's many of them. They are often called the mighty mitochondria because they're responsible for energy. They create ATP, which is adenine triphosphate. It's a type of energy. So usually they're kind of oval-ish. They have a back and forth sort of, I want to say almost like a lightning bolt-esque, which makes me think of energy. So maybe a good way to remember it. Usually, like I said, there's multiple. For space, though, I'm not going to draw many of them. This is called mitochondria. And we're in science class, so when you hear that k sound, it's CH. Chondri. Oh, you're not going to be able to see that. Let me write that a little bit better. Okay. mitochondria. Technically, mitochondria is plural. Mitochondrion is singular, but we know there's more than one always, so we're going to call it mitochondria. This also kind of, I guess, looks like an M almost, so maybe that's another way you can remember it. Mitochondria, so far, everything we've drawn is in the animal cell except for the vacuole and the cell wall. Everything else is also going to be in the animal cell. The next one we're going to do is the chloroplast. Now, chloroplast is only in the plant cell, and that is actually what gives it its green color. It helps it go through photosynthesis, captures light, turns it into glucose. Kind of important, for all life to exist. So the chloroplast are also kind of ovals. There's many of them. We're just going to draw two again. And they almost have what looks like, I don't know, solar panels. Not really, but it makes me think of them because they kind of do the similar thing. And the chloroplast they have something called chlorophyll in them, but for now we're just going to do chloroplast. Again, that k sound, CH, you're in science class. That's just, if it's a sciencey word, comes from Greek, most likely, chloroplast. I'm gonna have to draw an arrow for this one to label it. So I'm just gonna kind of chloro. Chloro actually means green, so pretty fitting. Okay, chloroplast. Almost done. The next one is going to be the Golgi bodies. Golgi bodies are, there's multiple, hence bodies, and to me, looks like a Wi-Fi symbol, but okay, kind of like that. I drew it on near the vacuole. I don't actually know if that matters. I feel like I've seen it in other places, but for space, I'm also going to draw an arrow and just write it over here. Golgi bodies, also known as the Golgi apparatus. So Golgi bodies. Now, the other thing that's in here, there's two things that all of this sort of is in. The liquid, it's kind of like a gel that it sits in. It's mostly water, but it's a gel, and a lot of the chemical processes take place there. So I'm going to point to nothing, but really I'm pointing to the substance that everything's sitting in. That is called the cytoplasm. Plasm is kind of a good hint for the texture. It's like plasma, you know. Cytoplasm, it's what everything sits in. That cytoplasm is actually very, very important. So much that is broken down and these other organelles are transferred around. A lot of the chemical reactions that happen take place in the cytoplasm. There's also all this tiny dots. Now they're the same type of dots that are on the endoplasmic reticulum. These are called ribosomes. They're just sort of everywhere. I'm sure there's more detail to them if I were to zoom in, but this is what we're going to draw. So these little dots, I'm going to point. These are called ribosomes. And you might be tempted to call them ribosomes, but the syllable divides after the I, so it's ribosomes. I think that's everything. Let me check my notes. I've drawn everything, but I want to label two other things. Actually, one other thing. So just like there's a cell membrane, there's also, and this is called the nuclear membrane. It surrounds the nucleus. So I'm going to draw an arrow here. I realize that not everyone is an artist, and I'm not either. I've become very good at drawing basic science pictures over a long period of time. So if for some reason this was an incredibly difficult task and you are struggling, feel free to go after this and print off the picture that of all of this and put it in your notebook. Print it and put it in your notebook. If that is the option you choose to do, then coloring is mandatory because I still need you to interact with it and somehow. That I always put copies of my notes in our files under shared notes. I think that if you have the shared notes accommodation, that would apply to you 100%. So feel free to use that. Okay, so just kind of looking at this, some differences I'll point out again. Vacuole, not going to be in the animal cell. Rigid cell wall, not in the animal cell. Chloroplast, not in the animal cell, although it'd be cool if we were green. And that is everything. Right, yes. And the overall shape is different, but that's because of the cell wall. The animal cell tends to be more round, blob-ish. Again, I'm generalizing. So let's just kind of draw an oval for the sake of this note-taking activity. So this is our animal cell. No vacuole, so that's not the biggest organelle anymore. The biggest organelle in this one's going to be the nucleus. Usually it's central, but it doesn't have to be. It's just usually the largest, most obvious organelle. Circle. There's the nucleolus inside of it as well. Nucleus with the DNA inside of it. Nucleolus, nucleolus. All right, and then obviously this outer part is called the nuclear membrane. And it's not spelled brain like brain in your head, unfortunately. That'd be too easy. We have the endoplasmic reticulum again. I may not make it as big this time for space. So we've got the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and the rough. Oh, I called it rigid earlier. That's wrong. Not sure where that came from all of a sudden in my head. This should be rough, R-O-U-G-H. So sorry. Surprised I didn't catch that. Okay, so we have the smooth ER, the rough ER, which means it has to have ribosomes on it to indicate that it's rough. Okay. We have the mighty mitochondria. Mitochondria. Again, powerhouse, energy, all that good stuff. We have this, what do I want to do? Golgi bodies. Doesn't have to be 3, it can be more. I'll just draw. But they're usually clustered together, and for some reason their size varies, usually largest to smallest. So these are the Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies. Same thing. We have the ribosomes. Oh, we do have a vacuole. We do have vacuoles in the animal cell. They're just small. There's more of them as well. These are vacuoles. So they are also used for storage, but not as big. Then we have ribosomes. I recommend, as I'm saying, going through these, that you practice saying them as well, so that when you hear them, you know what you're hearing. This gel-like liquid that it's all floating in is the cytoplasm. Again, chemical processes are going to take place there. And you have, there's other things in there. There's centrioles, lysosomes. There's other things going on, but we'll call it there, other than the cell membrane, which is the outer part. We don't have a cell wall in our cells, so No cell wall needs to be drawn. Let me just check my notes that I got everything. Yes. Okay. So going back here, a lot of similarities in plants and animals. Not surprising, we're both eukaryotes, large eukaryotes. Just note the difference in sort of overall shape. The vacuole here, there's chloroplast in here. This is a cell wall. This would be the color green. Animal cells vary. And so that brings me to my next activity. So your output, P versus A Venn diagram. Venn diagram is just a comparison tool that I bet you've seen 1,000 times. So draw two circles overlapping. The bigger the overlap, the better. I kind of regret that mine is so tiny, but that's okay. So if you need to get something circular to help you draw them out, that's fine. I kind of wish I did that as well. Too late. You're going to do this part on your own, and I think you can absolutely handle it. You're going to say, what is specific to just the plant cell? What is specific to just the animal cell? And then what do they both share? What are their similarities? So differences, similarities. You can do these in bullets. Don't feel like you need to make this epic list in full sentence form. Wow, you're not going to fit that. Keep it bullets. So I'll do one for you. One bullet for the animal cell side might be multiple small vacuoles. Okay, and one larger vacuole. Note, I kept it simple, not writing sentences here. That is, we're not going to present these on Flipgrid. They're just not interesting enough to present on Flipgrid. So what I'm going to have you do is attach an image of your completed Venn diagram to the assignment. So make sure when you finished, you take a picture and you submit it as well. That's part of this. Reach out if you have questions. Thanks.